考定之道皆英语之事，大学习之意皆文化之国。Just Show Q&A， 嘉盛家长会。Welcome back to Just Show Q&A. I'm David Jennings, and I'm going to talk to you today about English names. In Chinese, if you have a name like Kong, it's assumed you're a descendant of Confucius. A name like Bai probably means you're Muslim. English names have these kind of meanings too. Our surnames, family names. If you have a name like Martinez or Fernandez, your ancestors spoke Spanish and may have come to America as early colonists, or they may have come from Mexico or Spain. If you have a name like Schwartz or Stein, those names are German, and hence your ancestors probably came from Germany. Names like Smith, Jones, the most common names, are English, so your ancestors probably came from England. In America, there are many, many different ethnic groups, and most of them have distinctive surnames. There are a few that are interesting, like Lee. If your name is Lee, then you either came from England, like Robert E. Lee, the famous general, or perhaps you came from China, and your name is really Lee. Many Chinese students choose an English name sort of as a plaything. They think it's funny to have an unusual or strange sounding name, which is probably okay if you're a young student, but as you grow older and become used to using your name, you may find it has, well, a bad meaning or a stupid meaning, or people, native speakers hearing it, are going to laugh at you. There are some names of students that I've had are names like Joker, Empty, Simple. A name like Joker, if you walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm Joker," they're not going to trust you. They're assuming that your name is telling something about you. Simple, while it might sound like a good name for a Chinese speaker, in English, a simple person is a person who is not very smart. So if we say a person is simple, it's a polite way to say that they're stupid. Empty, well, I suppose in Buddhism, being empty is a good thing. In English, to English speakers, being empty means you have no ideas. So again, it's probably not the best name. I've had names like Vampire, Lucifer, Lolita. A name like Lucifer may seem reasonable to someone whose native language is Chinese because it simply means the light bearer, someone who carries light. To a native speaker, however, particularly an educated one, Lucifer was the angel who carried light in heaven. And centuries ago, he was thrown out of heaven for rebelling against God. So we think of Lucifer as the devil, the evil one. So if your name is Lucifer, people aren't going to trust you. Lolita was an acceptable name until someone wrote a novel about a very young girl who had habits that we wouldn't want our children to have. So now in America, no one names their daughter Lolita. Moving on to some better sounding names. How would you select a name? American parents usually do this from the Bible. Many Americans are Christians, and Judaism is also a very large religion in America. So we use the Bible to pick names for children. Biblical names are almost always acceptable, with a very few exceptions, such as Lucifer. Some very common English biblical names are David, my name. It means beloved, which I only know because it's my name. David was a king of Israel approximately 3,000 years ago, and his name was recorded in the Bible as being one of the most famous kings of Israel. His son Jonathan rebelled against him, but that's not considered a bad thing, so Jonathan is also a very common name. His other son Solomon, who did not rebel, became the next king of Israel and became famous and well known for wisdom. Solomon used to be a very common name, but in recent years it's fallen out of favor and is not frequently used except by Jews. So now, in the modern times, typically if we hear someone named Solomon, we think that he is of the Jewish religion. Some samples of names: Samuel, Matthew, Ruth, Rebecca, Susan, Dorcas. All of these names have some meaning. Susan, for instance, means lily. Dorcas means a deer. Some other names, those names come from the Hebrew language, which the Bible was originally written in. Some later names come from Greek and Latin, from the New Testament of the Bible, which Christians follow. Names like Luke, Mark, Anthony, Peter. Peter is kind of interesting. It just means rock. One of Jesus' disciples, Jesus said, "I will build my church on this rock." And after that, the man was named Rock, Peter. So Peter has become a very common name in the modern world. Names like Luke come from the Latin Lucius, Mark from Marcus. So they were originally Latin names, but have been adopted into English because of the Bible. There are some other Latin names that have become, they weren't actually names in Roman times, but in the modern world they've become names because of Christian beliefs. Dominic, which means Lord. Benedict, which means spoken well. Felix, which means happy. So many names of famous people, such as American presidents, are biblical or classical names. People like George Washington, whose name George just means farmer. John Kennedy. John is from the Bible, the Apostle John. William Clinton, whose name comes from classical England. Abraham Lincoln, whose name Abraham is quite famous from the Bible. Our current president, Barack Obama, has a very unusual name because his name comes from Arabic, which has not been a popular language in America, but now perhaps many children will be named after him. That brings me to the ethnic names. America is a country of migrants. Pretty much everyone there came there from somewhere else, or their family did a long time ago. So names like Barack come from Arabic. Many of the more popular names we have names like Linda. Linda is a very common name in America. It's just the Spanish word for pretty. So a girl named Linda is pretty. Other Spanish names that have been adopted are Donna, which means lady in Spanish, and Bonita, which means beautiful in Spanish. So some of the more popular names come from other languages. We have names like Deirdre, or Fiona, or Ian, that come from the Gaelic languages of Scotland and Ireland. The Irish were a big group who came to America, and so we've adopted many of their names for our children. We put our personal name first and our surname last. Many Americans also have a middle name, although they're not commonly used. Most Americans either don't use their middle name except on official papers, or if they don't like their personal name, they can change it with their middle name. Following up on the idea of cycles, in China, if someone has a name like Jianguo or Jianjun, you know that they were probably born in the 1950s and were named after the styles of the 1950s. Or if someone is named like Wei Bian, perhaps they were born during the Cultural Revolution in the 70s. America doesn't have quite as distinct a style, but we do go in cycles with names. Among my daughter's friends, there were a number of girls with names like Tiffany and Brittany, names that you almost never see in older women. So just like you don't see a young girl named Berta, you don't see very many older women with a name like Tiffany. Following up on the ethnic names and cycles, immigrants came to America in groups, different times depending on what was happening in the world. For instance, in the 19th century, a lot of Irish came, and so suddenly we had girls named Deirdre and Fiona, and we had boys named Ian, which is a Scottish name when the Scots came. Then later we had Italians come, and suddenly names like Dominic and Antonio were becoming popular and were widely known and accepted. Nowadays, interestingly, we've had a lot of Asian immigrants, and so names like Sumitra, names from India, which previously you never heard in America, have suddenly become common and widely accepted. And so French names like Suzette, which is really Susan, but it sounds different. Jeannie, which translated comes across pretty much as John with a girl's ending, so it sounds like a girl's name. A name I've heard often in China adopted as an English name is actually French, Coco. Coco, though, was a nickname adopted by a fashion designer. So while it's widely known and somewhat accepted, it's not considered a real name. And then we come to the unusual names. In America, some of the ethnic groups choose names based on sound. So we have people with names like LaShonda, Lakeisha, which the names sound interesting, but they don't really mean anything. They were picked purely by their sound. There are also quite a few English names I've heard used in China that are interesting, and there's nothing particularly wrong with them, but we don't consider them names in America. Some examples: apple, ocean, summer, winter, or spring. Now, these names in America are not considered names and are not usually used as names. But there's nothing particularly wrong with them. They just sound a little strange. So if you want to use a name like that, it's okay. It'll just sound strange. And for that matter, I've known women named Summer and Spring in America, although only one or two. So to wrap up, probably the best thing for picking an English name is to make sure that you know the meaning of it and to look a little bit into the use of that name. Common names should be acceptable. Names from the Bible are usually acceptable. Names of people like US presidents are probably acceptable, because if a president had an unacceptable name, he would change it. So the best thing, don't pick a name that is unacceptable. Something like Lucifer would not be accepted by Americans. A name like Lolita would cause people to think you were strange for letting your daughter have a name like that. Well, that's all for English names for today. To find out more, you should check with Just Show Q&A.
到此一穷千里目，谁知财上一层楼。